Wyatt Claypool, thank you for joining me. You're not Marty. I know this is the Marty and Clyde show.
I'm not even Frank. Apparently, I'm number 3.
So,
and I'm probably number 6 because you probably ended up asking 3 other people who said no, and then I finally said yes.
Of course, I asked you next.
It goes back to my availability skill.
You're the one who's always available. So this is what happened actually for folks that were looking forward to seeing Frank tonight. And this is, of course, seeing Wyatt's not a letdown. This is going to be fun. This is going to be a great time. I've had Wyatt on the show many times, but Frank was meant to come on the show tonight and was unable to make it because his roof, I don't know, collapsed. I don't think it collapsed entirely. Sprung a leak, and there's a bunch of rain coming. So he's like, sorry, I can't make it. I have to fix this immediately. So absolutely understandable. So Wyatt was kind enough to join on the very, very last minute, like a half an hour before we went live. So good thing Wyatt seems to always be available.
Yeah.
Wasn't that the case when we went to Texas? You're just available and you're like, yeah, I'll come to Texas. Sure.
Yeah. I think that was legitimately it. I think you guys asked a few people and you're like, do you want to show up? I'm like, oh, okay, let's do it. And then that was it. That was like, it's not even a story.
Too funny. Well, let's get into it. So this was an interesting week, to say the least. I mean, have we not had an interesting? We've had some dull weeks, actually. Come to think of it, there was a few dull weeks in the past, but this week has really, I kind of ramped it up with a few controversial things, and it seems to be coming out of the East Coast now. This is a thing. Now, it was a week ago, we had the controversy of the big new beautiful houses that everyone can expect to live in the future, because this is Canada's future, of course. We're all looking forward to where things are going in the country. This was the story that came out of Nova Scotia, and this, of course, is Tim Houston making this announcement. Tim Houston, of course, I didn't realize, conservative from Nova Scotia, the premier.
Progressive conservative is always the modifier that you need to note.
Okay, well, I guess there's a difference there. So he says more housing, more affordability, more momentum. We're building 29 new affordable homes in Port Hawkesbury and Arcachat, giving more families a safe, stable place to call home. Families. This is their plan for families. We were promised 50. They were promised 50,000 homes. They're delivering 29 of these. That's what millions of dollars of taxpayers' money is going towards. You could fit your whole family in that bungalow, apparently.
Not even 29 of these. It sounds like 29 units. And so it would really only be like 7 of those or whatever. Like,
that's right. Yeah.
You and your family get to live in this fairgrounds concession stand and serve people like nachos out of the window there. Like, it actually looks like something that you'd put off towards the side of a carnival. And this is where you're going to get your cotton candy and your your gelatinous nacho cheese and chips.
Yeah, exactly. So, but that's not where it ended. And of course, this is reminding people that this is a conservative. You're saying progressive conservative. We'll get into the definition of that in just a moment. This was the announcement that came out today. I'll just let it play. This is unbelievable.
Effective 4 p.m. today, we're telling Nova Scotians, stay out of the woods. We are restricting travel and activities that really aren't necessary for most of us. Hiking, camping, fishing, and the use of vehicles in the woods are not permitted. Trail systems through woods are off limits. Camping is allowed, but only in official campgrounds. The fine for violating any of these bans is the same as the fine for the ban on burning, $25,000. And if you're a smoker, for God's sakes, be mindful of where you're butting your butt out. If you don't, and you cause a fire, we will hold you accountable. So what does this mean if you have a home or cottage surrounded by a wooded area? We strongly encourage you to stay out of those woods, regardless of where they are. Please
you live
don't
in the
do
woods.
anything that could unnecessarily put you, your family, or your neighbors at risk. This situation sucks. Summer is one of the best times in Nova Scotia, and we all look forward to getting outdoors and enjoying our scenic beauty that surrounds us. I get that, and I'm right there with you as Nova Scotians. But you can still go to the beach. In fact, that's a great place to be on these hot, dry days. Just no bonfires. If there's a short trail to get from point A to point B, like from the parking to the beach or to the lake to fish, that's fine. But that's it. No heading into the woods to spend time there. I know it's inconvenient. I know it's the height of summer vacation and people want to do all the activities that we so much enjoy in our great outdoors. We have a beautiful province. I know everybody wants to enjoy it, but we have to stay out of the woods. It's a small price to pay right now to avoid the kind of devastation that we saw from the wildfires in 2023. Nobody wants to go back there.
Nobody wants to go back there. Hold on. We have people asking us to make a small price to pay one more time. This is happening again. Restrict your mobility, stop you from going and doing things, introduce fines, $25,000 fines. What were you going to add?
Yeah, apparently they're the don't touch grass ordinances. That video had I've seen hostage videos with more energy than that. That guy, it was giving me serious Bill de Blasio energy there when he was like, when he was doing all the COVID lockdown videos. What the heck was that? Like, that was just odd in so many ways. Really? You're going to find people the same for going out and hunting or just being in the woods in general as you would if somebody was like mass burning things on their property.
Yes, that's exactly what they're doing. And it's crazy. I mean, people are commenting about it now. Here's Viva Fry saying the last saving grace for Canada was it's great outdoors. Tim Houston belongs in jail. Like, this is it's absolutely ridiculous. What did I write? I said, Canada, what makes Canada great is that we're so close to nature. Tim Houston, also Canada, $25,000 fine for getting too close to nature. Really, that's one of the things that we've all, I guess, a lot of Canadians like to identify as like, well, that's what makes Canada unique. We're so close to nature. It's a really interesting way of saying we're not civilized. We're not completely civilized, but yeah, we're really close to nature. But now we can't go in nature. Now in British Columbia, we've had this situation almost every single year. We live in a tinderbox, right? It's coniferous trees. As far as the eye can see, the forest bed is dry. Their fuel load is crazy because of just piss poor management of the forests over here. But they've never banned hiking. This is the outdoor capital of the world. You know what I mean? They would never even think of banning hiking. Walking in the woods. They've said, they've closed the bike park, things like that before in Whistler because, sparks could happen, but they've never just all out said you're not allowed to enter the woods, period. That's just crazy to me.
It just screams that there was some sort of policy focus group that happened in his government where people kept sort of like, I guess, turning their brains more and more inside out, thinking of all the possible ways that we could have risk. And then they concluded, just keep people padlocked in their homes and then we will survive. And again, this all goes to poor forest management. And this is the problem with the climate change narrative, the climate alarmist narrative, is you don't actually have to do proper forest management anymore. Anytime there's a crisis, lock people down in their houses, blame climate change, and then continue not spending any money on things that you actually should spend money on as a government, like forest management.
Well, they say, just let nature do what nature does. Well, you know what nature does? It burns forests. That's what happens. And then
in the year 1821, 1/6 of all the landmass of New Brunswick burnt down in a fire. And I don't think that was climate change. 1821, 1/6 of the entire area, not just 1/6 of the forest, of the entire square kilometers of New Brunswick burnt down in 1821.
There was a similar thing that happened in the Oregon area on the West Coast. And it was this huge event, and several people died during the event because they were trapped in little towns here, pockets here and there. But after which, what they did was they came up with a new strategy, and it was just fire suppression. You see a fire, put it out. See a fire, put it out. No controlled burns, no cleaning of the brush, the underbrush, or any of that stuff. And it was just 100 years of fire suppression. Now it's led to this giant fuel load. And people who are experts in forestry management have been screeching about this for decades. Listen, Patrick Moore was one of them. Many others saying, listen, if you don't do something about the fuel load, you're going to have what's known as crown fires, where it's not just underbrush that's catching fire and burning through areas. You'll have the treetops, the whole forest goes up, and then it's scorched earth. You talk about like killing all the enzymes inside the soil bed, all of that stuff. This is what happens. And what do you do? What are we going to do? We're just going to all lock down in hopes that it never, ever happens ever? No, we need to really have a good strategy for actually having controlled burns.
And as you would know, in BC, this is a big problem for the BC forest industry, is that they are absolutely getting decimated by bad government policy, just ruining large swaths of perfectly good forest that they could have been chopping down those trees and turning them into good products. But we just aren't allowed to go in there because you could cause a fire, even though by going in there, you actually might be able to cut some channels through the trees and create fire breaks and do forest management and actually turn that stuff into real product. But we just let it all burn down, and you're not even allowed to take the burnt trees in order to turn it into fiber.
You're just getting your money from big wood, aren't you?
Yeah.
And that's the thing. So people
I'm also paid by big airlines because I actually didn't like Pierre's and Kyle Seaback's policy on airlines.
Well, we'll have to get into that in a minute, but the idea here is you're right. It's actually the people who spend the most time in the forest and have devoted their entire careers to managing forests and cutting down trees and harvesting. They're the best suited for the job. It's amazing because I know fallers. I live in a logging town where the biggest event once a year is the logging sports, where they chop down trees and have a competition. People go from all over the world come to it. And this is the thing. People in that industry, they know the best, not some Greta Thunberg who just, Jonah come lately, who thinks that she knows everything about how the climate and forestry and all of this stuff works. But you'll get lots of people that'll tell you over and over again, well, this is the driest year on record. This is the driest. Well, every year is a new dry year on record. Where do your moisture samples date back to? It's unrealistic what this is all coming down to. And what it really comes down to is a civil liberties thing. And this is a great tweet from Christine Van Geyn. She's from do you know the CCF, the Constitution Foundation? That's the one, the Canadian Constitution Foundation. She has this great tweet where she's talking about this exactly. When safety becomes a weapon, everyone loses. Nova Scotia's forest ban is overkill, and it's a deja vu. It's happening now because the government got away with it the last time. This is a classic example of safetyism, a mentality where risk becomes an excuse for control, not communication. Once the government sees that overreach is workable, it's replayed every few years. I've got a report coming out soon on government overreach in the guise of safety and how these policies expand unchecked. Stay tuned. This is just the beginning. And
this is what happened with a judge in Toronto, where apparently, even though I don't like him, I agree with this move. Doug Ford's government is apparently not allowed to remove bike lanes in Toronto that are causing major traffic jams because it's forcing large amounts of traffic trying to go around the city into singular lanes. And a judge ruled that you can't remove these bike lanes because it could cause bodily harm. People might die. There was blood on your hands. And it's like, then you're effectively saying bike lanes are a human right. Because if you can't get rid of them because something could happen, well, why aren't you required to put them in because something could happen? It's so stupid.
Yeah, that's arbitrary, it seems. Very much so. We've got Jeff Evely also here saying, in response to Christine on this tweet thread, saying that last time he actually submitted an application for judicial review that the same order on charter and human rights grounds. The court refused to grant me standing, stated I was not fined, therefore I was not impacted. I argued that expecting Nova Scotians to risk $25,000 fines was unreasonable, that having to commit the act of hiking in order to find out whether it was illegal or Kafkaesque, it looks like I will be incurring a $25,000 fine. Do you have any recommendations on where I can get proper legal representation? So because the last time they put travel restrictions and told people they would get these huge fines, people challenged it without actually getting the fines. And that's not good enough, apparently. You can't challenge the fact that they're telling you not to. You have to risk getting in trouble for it instead of just challenging it. So this go around, it looks like there's a bunch of people that are willing to just disobey these laws. And that's good because I think Canada largely has an obedience problem for the most part. There's a huge obedience problem. People are told to do things that are contrary to what their rights are, contrary to the things that they believe in, contrary to their convictions, and yet they do it anyway. They just go along, and this is why our government just feels entitled to do whatever the heck they please.
We have this toxic mix of being a high trust society with like the most untrustworthy elected officials. You cannot trust that they are going to stick to their word. They will do authoritarian things. And so many people will just say, well, that guy said it, so it's probably about right. And the thing is, based on even just the online reaction to this, it's not like COVID lockdowns in 2020. It seems to be pretty overwhelming, even on people from the left side of the aisle saying, yeah, this is stupid. What the heck are they thinking? And so although I did,
I've unbelievably been seeing a lot of people defending this, saying, well, this is what you got to do.
That's why I want to cut to. I did send you the link. We have the CBC's representative for what a conservative is saying that this is not a civil liberties violation. Fred Delory, who's usually on the panel with David Cochrane on Power and Politics. Again, this is an indictment of the CBC. This man is the one who is supposed to tell us what a conservative would think about any situation in politics. And he's going online to argue with people to say, no, it's actually okay for the government to say that you can't hike because it might be a fire risk. I guess that you're going to cause a lot of sparks by walking.
Which link was that you sent me?
It was the last one I just sent.
Oh, okay. Let me pop this up on the screen. So what's he saying in this?
So he is responding to this Michael Taub guy below, and he says above, yeah, no kidding, you're not on side. You've made that pretty clear, but this isn't government overreach. It's a deterrent because the province is a tinderbox. The premier even said you can still go fishing, take trails to the beach, etc. It's just not the time to go wandering off into the dry woods. We've seen that what one spark can do. And it's like, that's the problem. It's the idea, well, something could happen. One spark could do X, and so we're allowed to do irrational things. And I hate this bargaining that goes on. Well, the premier said you can still go to the beach. It's like, well, what if I don't want to go to the beach? What is this?
You're still allowed to do these things. Here, have a little bit of that.
You can still sit in your house and be a loser like me. So that means you actually have freedom because the government has given you a little sandbox of freedom. You can't do anything outside of it, but why don't you just enjoy the freedom inside the small sandbox? It's like just such a loser mentality. And again, that guy we just read the tweet from is the standard bearer for what a conservative is on Power and Politics on the CBC.
Which is it's asinine what they have as conservatives or people who are supposed to be right leaning, libertarian, that kind of thing. They never represent the views of what they say that their views ought to be. Now, this is going. I mean, how long before they start saying freedom again and spelling it D-U-M-B? It's only a matter of time. But here we have Mark Nixon even sharing this one out, saying Nova Scotia created a snitch line to report Nova Scotians that decide to walk in the forest. This is a warm-up drill for the Online Safety Act This is it rolling out. And yeah, there it is. Nova Scotia, report violations. If you see your lovely neighbors doing anything seemingly normal by just going for a jaunt in the woods or on a trail, report them to this number so they can all receive a $25,000 fine. And for the most part, That would bankrupt most Canadians at this point because our
Especially the
economy is doing
Maritimes.
so terrible.
Especially in the
Yes.
Maritimes too, like where incomes are already not that high. A lot of people, there's a high unemployment in the Maritimes, and you're going to find someone $25,000 who, let's just assume, may not even see these ridiculous government ordinances, and they decide to go like out for a hike because they're not glued to the news all the time and they're not seeing the stupid things the premier of Nova Scotia is saying. And I want to cut to something else. This guy wants to be the federal Conservative Party leader. Him and Doug Ford were knifing Pierre during the election, in part because they would hope he'd fall apart, and so that they got a chance to run. That was very clearly, that's been very clearly said by a lot of insiders in politics. Doug Ford really wants to run. Tim Houston wanted to run. They couldn't stop criticizing him during the election. And so if you're Pierre Poilievre, in a certain sense, this is good news because Tim Houston has effectively bumped himself off from the running.
Oh yeah, I mean, I don't know if you'd see a lot of people voting for the guy that is introducing tiny homes. I mean, the tiny homes are not even tiny homes; they're micro homes. They're single room dwellings for your family, and also banning people from doing summer activities in summer because it's dry outside and the forest. They don't want to spend any money on forest management, and also the punishment. I mean, it's gotta. I have to bring this up. The punishment is just, it outweighs everything. I put this tweet out there. This really sums it up. Meanwhile, in Canada, you're not gonna see any jail time for people who do the pet raising, and you're gonna get a $25,000 fine just for going out when you were told not to. It really is ridiculous. It's really come down to that.
It's okay though, Clyde, because the Americans aren't doing it, and that means it's good.
The Americans are. This is what I can't get enough of this. In Canada, it's been this for a long time, and because I'm a dual citizen, I've been a dual citizen my whole life, and it's one of these things. And maybe people are getting sick of hearing about this on the channel, but ever since I was a kid, anytime people would find out I was American, I would get treated differently. And now it's like times 1,000, right? Because we're going through this Trump derangement syndrome that largely America has gone through and gotten over for the most part. They got over it so much that they voted the guy in for another term, first time in a long time that a Republicans won the popular vote. And he's got a pretty high approval rating. And this is the thing. The deals that are happening around the United States, the countries that are dealing with the United States and they're making deals, Canada is not getting some extraordinary treatment. There's Donald Trump is not turning to Canada and saying to us here in Canada that we're especially getting a worse deal. We're getting actually probably a better deal than most other countries around the world. We saw what happened with Vietnam. We saw what happened with Indonesia, and they're very happy with their deals of 20% tariffs on all their goods going into the United States and then forcing their economies open to American companies to come in and compete with their companies in their lands and opening up all these markets. Same thing with Europe. Canada just seems to have this adverse reaction to this because Canada's had it so damn good. They've been, the Americans have been so forgiving for so very long on our protectionism here in Canada. And now finally there's a president that said, yeah, enough is enough. We're not going to deal with that anymore. And it doesn't seem to matter what side of the aisle, whether it's the conservatives or the liberals. Who cares what everybody else is saying? Is very inconsequential. But those two parties both have the same idea that these are unjustified tariffs. None of the things that Donald Trump or the administration or the United States is doing on trade right now is justified. Everything is just a big meanie. And Canada seems to just be crying about this. The rest of the world is looking at this like, get over it.
Well, what I always end up mentioning is that you can say, I think Trump's tariffs are disproportionate to what supply management is. And you can go through the nitty gritty of saying, well, Canada's tariffs on certain products aren't that bad and the American ones are really bad. It's like, it doesn't even matter. It's the reality of what is currently happening. Now, what are you going to do about it? And it seems like with so many Canadian politicians. All they want to do is say, this is unjust. I feel wronged. It's like, okay, well, now what are you going to do about it? Because it doesn't change how we actually need to proceed through the negotiations. We need to get a deal. And so either you have to put stuff on the table to offer to get a better deal, like getting rid of supply management or just loosening the rules around it, which would actually be good for Canada in general, because the current supply management quota system locks out so many farmers from actually being able to be profitable, because you're not allowed to, produce eggs if you're not part of the quota system. And even if you do, you may not be allowed to produce enough to make it even worth your while. But then, so we don't put any of that on the table. We were trying to implement a digital services tax in the middle of negotiations, and we look stupid having to rescind that. But we're not even making threats. We're going to Donald Trump and the president of Mexico, Claudia Sheinbaum, and saying, how about instead of signing a deal to quickly just do an end run around these tariffs, literally just give Trump a win politically. It doesn't even have to be big. And he's probably like, okay, 0 tariffs. Great. We're getting along with Canada. That would probably be it. But we're unwilling to do anything. And so we're approaching Claudia and Donald, and we're saying, how about we renegotiate all of USMCA right now? And both of them are ignoring us. It was revealed that Claudia Sheinbaum basically told the Canadian negotiators to pack sand after a friendly interview or a friendly meeting. And Trump is literally not even picking up Carney's phone calls.
Yeah, that's what's really embarrassing. I have a clip from this is Face the Nation in the United States. Dominic LeBlanc was invited to go on and speak there. Here's a clip here.
Canadian Minister for U.S.-Canada Trade, Dominic LeBlanc, who joins us this morning from Moncton, Canada. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Ms. Brennan.
You were just here in Washington negotiating, and while the talks are officially continuing, you left town without a deal, and you left town with now what is a 35% tariff on goods. How much of a setback was the president's decision to do that while you are still at the table?
So we were obviously disappointed by that decision. We believe there's a great deal of common ground between the United States and Canada in terms of building two strong economies that work well together. That's been the history of the 40-year free trade agreement that goes back to President Reagan. We were pleased the United States is respecting the terms of the USMCA agreement. That's vital, we think, to the cost of living and affordability, certainly in the United States. It's true in Canada as well. So we're going to continue to do the work. We left always with a better understanding of the American concerns in the trading relationship. Ambassador Greer, Secretary Lutnick engaged with us in constructive, cordial conversations. So we're prepared to stick around and do the work needed. We think, Ms. Brennan, that the economies of both countries are strengthened when we do things together. The trading relationship between Canada and the United States is unlike other partners. One description which I thought was very apt: we don't sell things to each other as much as we build things together. And that's why it's difficult in this relationship when so much is integrated, but we remain very optimistic.
So there's a lot to unpack on that one. I just want to, before we take, so just before he said USMCA, and this is something that's been getting on my nerves, is that in Canadian media, they say CUSMA. Now, the deal...
It's a terrible acronym. You say the acronym that sounds the best. You're not like, well, we're Canada, so we should put Canada first in the acronym. I'm not saying CUSMA or CUMSA or whatever. USMCA just sounds better. But
if you're in front of the Canadian audience and you say CUSMA because you want to say Canada first, and then the second you get on US News, you say USMCA, like, what is that about? Hold on. Hold to your guns. Call it CUSMA to the Americans and have them say, the hell are you talking about? What the hell is CUSMA? Oh, you signed the USMCA and then you go back to Canada and you call it something else? Forget it. It's asinine.
The rhetoric is so tiring when they go on and talk about the negotiations in front of the media. And I kept hearing leading up to August 1st, no, the Liberals know what they're doing. They're not going to tell you their negotiation strategy while they're still negotiating. Like, well, Trump tells everyone what his negotiating strategy is beforehand. Everyone else does. And you can still tell people, oh yeah, we're offering some things, we're saying we may have to do this if you don't do this. You can be really vague. At least I would get the idea that you're actually thinking. So often, every time we hear the Canadian negotiators talking about how the deals are going, all they say is, well, we're highlighting that we're better together. It's like, what is this, a commercial for peanut butter and jelly? What the heck? Like, just tell us what you're actually doing. Stop saying, we work so well together. We build stuff together. Like, what are you going to hold like a boombox over your head and ask them to take you back? Do something real. And now
I love the 80s
now,
reference.
yeah, now they're trying to do this thing where they're saying, well, actually, when you think about it, it's not that bad. We have a 35% tariff on our non-USMCA compliant goods because USMCA compliant goods don't have a tariff applied to them. It's wrong because, do you know, in 2024, when there was no 35% tariff, if you were not a USMCA compliant good, depending on what it was, you were only being tariffed anywhere from like 3 to 8%. But only about 24% of companies, 35 give or take, would even bother making their products USMCA compliant, which should tell you on the rules of economics that the credentials getting certified was not worth 3 to 8%. So the thing is, that means we are still paying more because you have to source the materials, you have to source the labor, you have to do a lot more paperwork in order to become USMCA compliant, which means that companies are having to pay more people to constantly do paperwork with shipments to show they're compliant, to show where the materials are coming from, to show where the labor was done and all this stuff. And those labor costs are going to increase depending on where it's made because you can't get cheaper wool from Egypt, import it, then turn it into a t-shirt. The wool has to be from Canada, turned into a t-shirt in Canada, and then shipped to the United States. So we are paying more even though we are avoiding the tariffs. We are doing something that just happens to cost less than the tariffs.
That makes a lot of sense. Now, yeah, this idea that we build stuff together, what's the history behind that? The history behind that isn't that, well, it's usually in the automotive industry. This is where a lot of that rhetoric comes from because these guys are from Ontario. Dominic LeBlanc from the Ontario region, probably that or Quebec. But working together in the automotive industry means what? It means Canadians building American cars for American manufacturers. There are no Canadian manufacturers that have been working with American manufacturers to conglomerate and make this new thing. No, it's just labor. We are just labor, a labor force at a time that historically in the past was overflowing from the United States and they needed more. So they turned to Canada and they said, can you guys make some parts for us? That would be fantastic. We'll train you, we'll tool you, we'll give you all the capital. We'll make that happen. Now things have contracted. Donald Trump's looking at it and saying, I want that manufacturing back in my country. And it's hard to turn around and blame him for that. I mean, if Pierre Poilievre turned around and if there was a similar scenario where manufacturing had left Canada and gone to another country, and Pierre Poilievre or even Mark Carney were to say, we want to get that manufacturing and bring it back to Canada. Damn it. Let's do that. People would be cheering that. Of course, people are cheering Trump for this. It's just, it happens to be that we are the recipient of that overflow. And we haven't really given much except complied with it.
And of course, our stupid response to all of this, with the steel and aluminum industries, with auto, with softwood lumber, is that we're going to invest in our industries to protect workers, which is another way of saying we are going to light cash on fire to pretend we still have an auto industry. And we could have an auto industry in the face of tariffs, in the face of all of this stuff. And you will 100% agree with me. Do you know how we could save all this? Just cut taxes. It's literally, I maybe sound like a political Neanderthal for saying this, but if you cut taxes, things will get better. But for some reason, we think that unless the government is actively doing something, like the government is shuffling around paperwork and then a check gets delivered to someone at the end of the day, that's when the government's doing stuff. The government doing stuff is getting out of your way and making it easier for you to be good at your job.
Well, why was America such a vibrant economy for so long in the first place? It was because of the lack of government. It was the fact that there was no government on people's backs. They were able to start manufacturing businesses, all of this stuff, just from a garage. You could have all the tech companies, it's famous. They all started in garages, and now they're one of the biggest industries, billions and trillions of dollars of industry built out of garages. It never could have taken off in Canada because there's too many regulations. That's the problem.
How do you think the United States won World War II? It's because they had to basically take the New Deal outside the back of the barn, beat it to death, and let all the manufacturers just go back to doing what they do best and actually producing. Yeah, there's government contracts involved, but it's just basically giving a contract to a company saying, can you get us this many bombers for this much money? And they're like, we can probably do double. And they would do it. And the thing is that it was far faster than when the government was saying, take this amount of material and make this product with this much labor costs and sell it for this amount of money, which was actually what was happening in some very early New Deal programs, which was literally just copy and pasting what they were doing in fascist Italy. Well, it's capitalism, quote unquote, or it's still free market. It's not at all. But we'll tell you what to do every step of the way, which means it happens slower, for an inefficient amount of money, for an inefficient amount of labor, and nobody really wants the product at the end of the day because it ends up being still overcosted, even though it's supposed to be cheaper.
So my theory with this whole thing, when it comes to the Liberals and trying to negotiate with the United States, is I think that they're trying to sabotage it. I don't think that they're in good faith trying to negotiate. In fact, the one thing that really solidified that for me was days before the deadline for negotiations with the United States, the Prime Minister of Canada comes out and says, we are going to recognize Palestine as a country when we go to the UN, and that's something we're going to do. Why the timing? The timing is just so, it's such a sabotaging thing. It seems like it was on purpose.
Apparently, we didn't get what we wanted by harassing Sean Foyt and pulling his permits with Parks Canada and all of our municipalities. And they're like, okay, well, we haven't pissed them off enough. So now let's recognize a terror state that's being run by two different terror organizations that don't even get along. Yeah, and it's not controversial to say that. One half is being run by Hamas, the other half is being run by the Palestinian Authority and Fatah, who are the moderates, who run a program where they'll give you a pension if you go and kill a Jewish person in Israel.
Well, and the whole point here is that Carney does this simultaneously as Donald Trump is trying to broker a peace deal. And if the Palestinians think that they... Right, dirty Americans trying to broker a peace deal, trying to make stuff happen.
I no joke saw Laura Babcock, who is this... to sum her up, she's a liberal who needs to be on her lithium. But she was agreeing with, when I say this, I'm not exaggerating, a neo-fascist on Twitter, Alexander Dugin, who is like the brain trust of Vladimir Putin. She was agreeing with him because he was anti-Trump. So this lady who is supposedly very surface level pro-Ukraine, even though she didn't care when things were going down in Crimea, she is agreeing with Alexander Dugin, who literally has tweets to the effect that he would like to see Ukrainians destroyed because they're subhuman or whatever, or they're like a degenerate people. She's agreeing with him because he is saying anti-Trump things now. These people live in a one-dimensional world.
Well, this kind of goes towards my theory, is that the Liberals are sabotaging this stuff because they've done such a terrible, terrible job with the economy for 10 years. And Carney was part of it. He was an advisor to Justin Trudeau. Justin Trudeau was just a pretty face with nice hair. He didn't have a single thought going through his head the entire time. He was just doing what he was told. He's told, you implement this crap and look at the focus group and do what they say. Just asinine economic policy for over a decade has led to diminished returns. We have an economy that is barely keeping up with 10 years ago. Barely keeping up. We got our COVID bump and then it went right back down, and that's just it. The Liberals they have to suffer this, right? They have to suffer this, but they won't if they have a good political strategy. And I think that this is a genius political strategy, honestly, because they know they're in the face of losing popularity as the economy goes down. But if they have a bad guy, if Donald Trump can take the fall for all of it, well, they're not to blame anymore. And everybody can vote Liberal.
And you're right that they probably were focus testing every step of the way when Carney at first went down to Washington and the Oval Office was very nice to Trump, which, by the way, is probably what you should do. That's not wrong to do. You should try to get along with the Americans. I was never one of these people saying, "Oh, look, now he's against Donald Trump. Now he's siding with Orange Hitler." I never became one of those people because some people ended up doing the whole, "Why is he selling out Canada?" I'm like, he's doing the right thing. I'm just annoyed that he didn't do it before, but they probably focus tested
Yeah.
that. They found out that a lot of liberal boomers didn't like it, and now they're wheeling it back, and they're going back to elbows up mode. And when that didn't work, they're saying actually getting a trade deal doesn't even matter, and we're going to be elbows up regardless. And it's just tiring after a while. It's tiring to see people who this sort of rhetoric, this sort of politics works on. We're not getting anything done. We have more than 10% of the population of the U.S. and we have less than 10% of the economic power. And all these people still think they just won the Super Bowl every single time Mark Carney says like the most mildly antagonistic thing against the United States.
Well, and it's absolutely crazy because as a country of 40 million people with such a giant landmass, I mean, obviously we're not strewn all over the landmass, but we are strewn across the border, which is a giant. How many kilometers is that? It's ridiculous. It's so far. So the logistics of shipping and all of that is huge. It's not an ideal country to have a huge amount of trade with. It's not. An ideal country to have a huge amount of trade with is countries like they're making deals with Vietnam, Indonesia, things like that, where you've got 100 million people on a little island. You've got 280 million people on a little set of islands. That's so much better for trade.
We were blown out of the water by the Americans when it came to European trade deals. We started signing deals with the UK and France. We were going piecemeal for some reason. And then Trump comes in, says, you're going to pay a 10% tariff and you're going to buy $650 billion a year worth of our energy. So our trade deal doesn't mean anything because they're not going to have any money left to buy some Canadian stuff after they've already bought all the American stuff they're committed to paying for. So we look dumb. Our flowery, model UN language doesn't work in the real world.
And what would the UN do if we became, because that's the talks that I'm watching polls after polls go by where a majority of Canadians are saying they would be favorable to joining the United Nations or the European Union. Sorry.
To be fair with those polls, what I speculated was the problem was people don't understand that you're not just signing on to like a trade agreement with the EU. They don't understand it's like a bureaucratic authoritarian state where you're going to subsidize a bunch of failed economies all over Europe, like effectively join with Germany and start paying all of Greece's debts again.
Yeah, it's exactly what they've done. Of course, Greece got a pretty sweet deal out of that one. Their palms got greased in that one, but that's what it is. It's a socialist program for the rich states to pay off the debts of the poor states.
Yeah, and you also the problem with the EU is that they meddle in domestic policy as well. They prevent, when the UK was part of it, they prevented fishermen from the UK fishing in their own waters because, well, the French actually get that because they have a bigger quota than you guys, so they're allowed to come into your territory to fish, and collect more because you already have your share. It's so dumb. One of my favorite countries on the planet is the Republic of Georgia in the Caucasus, and they want to join the EU, although with Georgia actually disproves a lot of things where people are like, Russia's actually just defending itself. Like, look at Georgia. They like to mess around with countries just because they can. But Georgia has wanted to join the EU for a while, and every time I hear about it, I'm like, why would you guys do it? Georgia's like an actual near libertarian European country, and they could just keep doing that and be good forever. But for some reason, there's this weird draw to being part of the big coalition as if it makes you a serious country, and it doesn't. It makes you one of the non-serious countries who wants other countries to do their homework for them. Not sure if you know this. The Republic of Georgia actually only had I think it's like a 10% flat tax across the entire country, corporate flat tax, and that's it.
Oh, that would be amazing.
Great place to go on vacation. I'm a shill for Georgia. Even though the Russians are trying to corrupt your elections right now. Like literally.
Who isn't? Who isn't? who isn't
You're
trying
right
to
along
corrupt
the
other
border. What do you
countries.
expect? Yeah.
Yeah, right, exactly. But that's neither here nor there. I see it as one of those things where joining an organization like that is a shoe in for protection. You get protection from a bigger country with a big, other countries that have militaries. And this is another part of the Canadian alliance with the United States. It's been an unfair situation. I mean, Canada, look at the Canadian military. It's just disheveled state. Only a few weeks ago, there was a hijack of a Cessna, and we had no capability of managing that situation whatsoever. And of course, people will say, well, that's NORAD. It's NORAD's job to do that. That's why we have this agreement. We have agreements because we sign on to anything that's offered to us. That's what it is. We're not really we're not really involved in that. Hey, would you like to sign this deal where we can come into your airspace and take care of you, Canada? Yes, please. Okay, we'll do it. And this is a thing that the Americans have been doing for way too long, taking care of Canada. And when they finally pipe up and they say, we'd like to see some security in the Arctic. We'd like to see some security. We'd like to see you pay up and do some things with, or NORAD, sorry, is NORAD. and we would like to see more effort, more money going into this. And Canadians are like, piss off. Instead of thank you. Yeah, sure. What can I do?
And I hate this mentality where people are like, well, look at the deal over here says. Well, the deal says they have to do it. I'm like, how about actually take a wider context and realize that the deal was a gift to us, that it basically treats us like 5-year-olds. And we should probably start being able to do this for ourselves, not because we're going to lose the deal potentially, but we should be doing it because we should be able to do it for ourselves. That's the problem with organizations like the European Union. It's a safety blanket for countries not pulling their own weight already. And it allows you, it's a welfare queen program. Everyone gets to be a welfare queen. That's the problem with supply management. It's another welfare queen program where badly managed agricultural industries get to keep being badly managed because you're not going to have to compete against Alberta for poultry and dairy because they only get 7% of the quota despite having 12% of the population.
So we've only got so much time left. We can talk about trade the whole time, but tell me a bit about what's going on amongst the Conservatives. I heard Jenny Barron had a showing. Everybody's been after her. She's the what do you call it? The scapegoat. The reason why Pierre lost the election. Now it can only be her. Nobody else was ever, I don't know, in charge of her being in charge. So what's the story here?
And that's the thing. I would say that Jenny Byrne is the main problem. But anyone who keeps her in her position and has been enabling in her position is part of the problem because they are keeping the problem around. But Jenny Byrne recently finally did this podcast where she came out to address her detractors from inside the party and outside the party. And the whole thing was just silly. I'm not sure if you've seen the clip yet, but she goes on to this podcast, and I am not kidding. The most predictable thing you could possibly think of. Well, people don't like me because I'm a woman or something like that. Or that added an extra sting to why people didn't think I did a good job. Not the fact that she historically sucks at her job. Oh, people are making vulgar remarks about me, and that's the problem. She does, in this clip, she does not address the nominations being rigged, well over 100 candidates not being selected when the writ dropped, despite the Conservatives demanding an election. It was a mess, and she doesn't want to talk about any of that, so she wants to talk about the surface-level dumb stuff.
So shout out to Stephen Taylor for posting this on there. Conservative campaign manager Jenny Barron opens up about the life in the spotlight.
Well, I start by saying, as Hyman Roth said in The Godfather, this is the business we choose. Right. So I understand that, winning is always better than losing. I do find it strange or perplexing that in all the years that I've been involved in politics, I've never seen post-campaign analysis focused on a campaign manager as much as what it has on me. And I'm not going to call out campaign managers, and not just from my party, but from friends that I have in other parties who have made what I would say actually controversial decisions for like Hail Marys for leaders that they worked for. Yep. I do find it perplexing. I don't think that being a woman has, as I said, affected I was 34 years old when I ran my first campaign. And so I don't think it's affected the the lead up to the campaign or the campaign, but the post analysis is a bit weird. And I know that like my sister will send me stuff, and it's people who like will comment on everything from my hair to my weight to my sex life,
Right.
to like,
Yep.
you know, and it's just it just seems very strange and bizarre to me.
That sounds like she sounds like a liberal. I'm
I
sorry.
hate it. She is a liberal. Yeah, they have a photo of her wearing a MAGA hat because she'll jump on the flavor of the moment for anything in order to seem like tough or whatever. I hate
That was
this.
well, okay. Well, I'm gonna just deflect all of the criticism to basically just tropes about her being a woman, being fat, about being I don't know what the sex
I've
life thing was,
criticized
except for the fact that she used to be Pierre Poilievre's girlfriend. I think
that's
maybe
something
what
I don't even ever mention. Like, I'm someone who criticizes her all the time, says she should be fired. She's a terrible executive director of the Conservative Party or national campaign director. She's trying to deflect to Twitter trolls as if that is the real criticism. The real criticism
This is
that,
why people hate the liberals, though. This is why
Yeah.
people have for years now been slowly moving away from liberalism. The left is because they behave like this. And on your way out, you start behaving like this. People are like, okay, don't let the door hit you in the ass on the way out.
she's like, it's the type of excuses Justin Trudeau would make. The idea, oh well, no, I didn't do a bad job. People just don't like that I'm progressive. People just don't like that I stand up for First Nations and gay Canadians and all this stuff. It's like, and then Jenny's like, oh well, people are saying this about my appearance or whatever. I have never said anything about her. She looks like a fine lady. I don't really care. I have only ever talked about her competence as a manager. She lost for Stephen Harper in 2015 with a boring, sluggish campaign. And in 2025, 10 years later, we had the anniversary of her sluggish campaign by her running another sluggish campaign. Over 100 ridings did not have a candidate when the writ was dropped, despite her communications team constantly saying, call an election now, call an election, Canadians want to get to the polls. And they didn't even have 100 candidates for some of their ridings. It was ridiculous. They were rigging nominations everywhere. Do you know there was only about 5 Conservative candidates that were actually allowed to leave their riding? You were banned from leaving your riding without express written permission. So guys who were sitting in safe ridings weren't allowed to travel over the border of their riding to go to and help out someone in a swing district. You weren't allowed to attend debates without permission. You were not allowed to message on anything without asking permission. You weren't even allowed to meet with community leaders unless they were first vetted. And you wonder why you lost some of these ridings by a few hundred votes? You weren't even able to be a person. You were like a campaign robot. That wasn't even particularly charismatic because Jenny Byrne is not a campaign manager. She is a risk manager. And that is it.
Well, she's a micromanager. She's trying to micromanage a campaign. Like, what is she, Chairman Mao? She's gonna be the central authority over the entire party, and then what? When they win, then we get central authority. This is the whole idea. Like, conservatives don't like the idea of central authority. The whole purpose is to decompartmentalize things and let people have their individualistic point of views. And you'll like a candidate because you like that candidate, and that's the whole idea. That all sounds ass backwards. It's like they got the cart before the horse.
The conventional wisdom is that a really good candidate adds about 5% to a vote in a riding. But the problem is that you can say, well, it's 5%, it's not much. The problem is that we got 0% extra effect from good candidates. In some ridings, when they really hit the doors, when they really grinded it out, you did get a good candidate effect. Ned Curick in Hamilton East is a great example. A 0% conservative win chance turned into a conservative victory because he ripped the doors off of that riding and made sure he was going to win. Matt Strauss is another guy. These people just absolutely slammed the doors in order to win. They did really good work. But the thing with other people who aren't in their 30s or 40s, who are maybe 50 or 60 years old, and they're told that you can't do anything, you can't do any media, you can't go meet with community leaders. Well, if you're a candidate who's, let's say, a 62-year-old woman, and you're saying that just go door knock, which is what I heard was the actual campaign instructions every day. Other than that, don't do anything. Well, of course they were going to lose. They weren't allowed to seem like real people in their own riding. They weren't allowed to connect with voters. And the thing is that we lost so many of these ridings by a couple points, by just 2 or 3%, and that was it. If we were allowed to get out there and actually speak to people, do our own media, call our own shots, you could do something well. Honestly, they told basically the pro-life people in the party to shut up. And it's like, guys, this is a great idea. How about you send the pro-life people to do a pro-life tour at all the churches in the GTA? We would have won. Do you think that was going to hurt us? Well, were the media going to attack churches? It wouldn't be a good look for them. But that's my rant there.
Well, I'm with you on that one. Yeah. So the guy that was riding for the Conservatives in my riding didn't even show up for the debates. And I met with him and asked him to come on the show. No can do. No, just didn't. Just ghost. It's so sad. It's so sad that this is how they ran the campaign. But so what's the deal then? She's gone and things are going to be different. Things are going to be better.
No. She's still around. It's been a controversy that she's been rehired.
Well, yeah, it's some lesser. This is what I'm hearing is that lesser role. She's just being kind of funneled out so she can save face, that kind of thing. Is that not true?
And the person who's probably in her role now is probably from Jenny Byrne and Associates or alumni of her lobby firm. Nothing's really changed. And that's the problem. Things could get better still.
Sad.
But the thing is that the party, here's my concession. Jenny can stay, but nomination rules have to be fixed. There needs to be real free speech in the party. Candidates need to be able to run their own campaigns. I don't care what Jenny Byrne does, as long as that's true. If people can do what they want, sure, Jenny's off in her corner doing her thing. That's fine. She's doing a few things on the macro campaign. That's okay. But as long as, like, let's say I'm a candidate and I was kicked out by her for running in Signal Hill, for having the audacity to run in Signal Hill. But if I'm allowed to do what I want to do in my riding, as long as I'm not contradicting the platform and I'm not doing anything obviously stupid, then let me do it. I know my riding better than she does, so let me do my thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with that. That would be a winning strategy. We haven't seen that, not with the Conservatives for a very long time, at least at that point. Now we're going to get into the community section of the live stream. So if you're watching this after the fact, you got to tune into this live. If you want to be part of the Q&A, you want to ask some questions, jump in for that. It's Marty and Clyde show is every Wednesday at 6:30. Today we've got Wyatt because Marty is out in the woods because he's not in Nova Scotia. That's why he's in the woods hiking, doing his thing. Sorry, Nova Scotians, go get your fine and challenge the system. For everyone who's watching, we'll see you in the next one. Wyatt, where can people find you?
Just on the National Telegraph YouTube channel. That's pretty much it. I do a lot of random stuff, but my main, hub is the National Telegraph. Make sure to go subscribe to it because I need 100,000 subscribers, as the sign over here indicates, or else I owe all my friends dinner in mid-December. I made the most lopsided bet of my life. If I don't succeed, I owe 4 people dinner, and if I succeed, 4 people just owe me dinner once.